Congratulations on grabbing this video training course. I'm going to teach you how to create high quality, profitable books. I'm going to show you how to streamline this whole process of creation and proofreading. So let's begin. This is video number 1, the introduction to book outsourcing. Just a quick overview here. We're going to talk about the videos as a whole, get you in the right mindset, general strategy, and what you need to get started. So this is video number 1. Video number 2 is going to talk about creating plot and structure specifications. You really need to get this right before you can start the book creation process, because if you don't know what your book, not necessarily what it's about, but how is it cut up into sections. For example, a fiction book has different types of plots, climax, and things like that. A nonfiction book, on the other hand, is more systematic, so it's split up into sections. So I want to make sure that you get this process right before you can move to the next step, which is, of course, finding a good writer. I'm going to show you how to find a good writer, how to pinpoint the good and the bad. And because if you get this process right and you find a good writer, then you can keep them. Then you can begin to pound out good books. If you find a bad writer in the first place, you're going to have to start back to square one in the next time, because this is going to produce headaches. So I want to make sure that I hammer this in, make sure that I cover it so that you find a good writer. Once we do that, we're going to revise it. We're going to look at the book to make sure that it aligns with our expectations. Video number 5, I'm going to show you how to find a good proofreader. There are wannabe proofreaders, and then there are proofreaders that are really good. There is a big difference between somebody who just proofreads and spelling and grammar versus somebody who actually reads the book and proofreads it. So once you understand what makes a good proofreader, you will be able to pinpoint a good proofreader when you begin to search for them. A lot of people make the mistake of just finding a proofreader or just finding somebody that somebody else referred. I want to make sure that you really put this into action, that you do your due diligence, that you apply what you learn and test and tweak yourself. Video number 6, I'm going to show you how to barter. I love bartering. There are ways to do it and not to do it. So I'm going to show you the ways to do it correctly, get it done effectively and fast, and everybody's happy in the end. Video number 7, he covered design. You gotta have a good design, otherwise people will judge a book by its cover. And if they judge your book by its cover and it's really not a great cover, but you have a really good book, you've invested all this money into finding a good writer, proofreading it, but then with just the e-cover design, if it doesn't necessarily appeal to the audience, then you're not going to make as many sales. All right, so video number 8, printing and distributing pod companies. I actually recently have been really testing many different pod companies. So you really get to take from my results and see my results, and that way you set yourself up for success. I'm going to show you how to format for that specific pod company, because different companies are different. It's just the way that they're set up. Their printers are set up in such a way that different companies just require different formats in terms of their exterior cover and their interior cover. Video number 10, I'm going to show you how to get a book website. So let's talk about mindset. There is no more I cannot do this. Before this video series, you probably felt this way because you've tried it. You've tried writing fiction novels, nonfiction novels, and you've had people saying, oh, you can do this. But the reality of it all is that you might be able to write a fiction novel, because you might be able to tell a story, but there are people out there that can do a better job and do a more effective job to the point that you can just manage this whole process, streamline it, get others to do it that love it. Because the reality is, if you don't like what you do, the end result that you produce isn't going to be that great. People on the other end will be able to see that. So the whole idea here is to find somebody that really loves what they're doing. So even with a lack of creativity, you can find somebody else who loves doing it. And if they're passionate about what they do, then great. Your end result is likely going to be really good. But you must understand how to pinpoint a good writer and proofreader, which is where most people fail. Fail this part and your book isn't going to be that great when you outsource it. So there's no excuses. Whether you say, I've got no creativity in any of my bones, you can still do it. General strategy, step 1, we're going to lay out your story, whether that's fiction or nonfiction, for the writer. Step number 2, we're going to find a writer and give those specifications to the writer. Step number 3, we're going to revise and give feedback to the writer to make sure that it's good. We're not necessarily going to worry about grammar at all. Don't even worry about that. Those are two separate things. Writing, especially fiction writing, that's a creative process. So don't worry about grammar. But then, once you have written it, find a proofreader. We're going to find the proofreader. You're going to get it right, format it, find a pod company, and release it and begin to market it. Here's what you're going to need. You're going to need to have your story or a good idea of what it is. Now, I'm going to try my best to give you some ideas on how to structure fiction and nonfiction. But you have to do your part to understand, do the proper brainstorming and niche research on your story, because this video course is all about getting it done. So whether that's fiction or nonfiction, you're going to need money for outsourcing. Book creation, it really depends on what you get created. It could be anywhere from $100, $200 to $300. If you find a good writer and you have them writing for you for a long time, then the beauty of that is that you will be able to create a whole team that you can streamline this whole process. You're going to need to have access to the internet and perseverance. So really what it comes down to is your story, money, and perseverance. So with that said, let's move on to video number 2. I'm going to help you take your story or your idea and begin structuring the whole process. Welcome back. This is video number 2, and I'm going to show you how to create a plot or structure outline for fiction and nonfiction. So whether you're doing fiction, you can use the plot part where I'm going to talk about plots. And if you want to do nonfiction, I'm going to show you how to do a structure specifications and write that up so that when you find a writer in the next video after this, then you can simply hand this to them and they have a better idea on what you want. Now, you don't necessarily want to do too much, because for fiction writers, you need to give them structure and give them an idea, but you want them to use their creativity to fill in the blanks as well. So you may choose not to do certain things like what I'm going to show you, or you may decide that, okay, well, I'm going to create a broad storyline, get some characters, give it an idea of what I want, but I'm going to give them freedom to kind of tweak things around and around. And I'll have to say that especially with fictional writers, that the more freedom and leeway that you give them, the better quality the end result will be. And we'll talk about structure as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is plots or fiction novels and fiction books. You'll need to have an idea of the general storyline. But if you have a vague idea and you don't really have everything written out, that's fine. Because what I'm going to do is cover all the little things that you'll need, and if you can answer these questions, especially for the character section, you'll be able to iron out a better storyline. So just write down a general storyline, and feel free to pause this video at any time to jot things down. After you have written down the general storyline, and it doesn't have to be perfect, just put one down. It can be a few words. You need to think about the narrative. How will the story be told? Or in other words, will the main character be telling the story, which is usually first person? And if you read a story and it says I a lot, I, and the character is really telling the story, that's what we call first person. It's a little bit harder to do first person because when you want to talk about other characters, it's a little bit harder. And the reader can get bored after hearing I. Third person is basically somebody else, like a character telling the story of somebody else. A narrator is a little bit easier because then you can act as somebody who really exist in the story itself and can talk about other different characters. It gives you a little bit more leeway. Now, in terms of characters, you want to ask yourself, who is the main character? Who are the protagonists? Basically, people that support the main character. And then who are the antagonists? People that are the villains that are against the main character. So just begin to jot down the characters there. Then you want to think about the goals and the actions. For example, what are the main characters' goals? The end goals in the end that they want to achieve. Or maybe they haven't necessarily found their purpose just yet and they will achieve that goal later on. That's just something to think about. What happens if the main character fails? What happens to the other characters, the environment, the antagonists? What does the antagonist achieve? What does the protagonist lose? And other things like that. And how will the other protagonists assist the main character? So how do they help the main character? How does the main character attempt to achieve his or her goals? Perhaps they achieve his or her goals initially by a certain way, but they find out that there's a better way, or a way that they don't know of. And kind of you see some stories about people who really don't know that they have a special gift or special ability. And then they figure it out, and then how do they use that special ability to achieve their end goals? And what will the antagonist do to thwart or go against the main character's efforts? What will they do or try to do to kind of bring them down? What kind of events possibly? What kind of equipment do they use? What kind of things that they do psychologically, mentally, or physically that try to deviate the main character's pathway to a different direction? And how will the main character respond to the antagonist? Do they respond in a certain way, physically, mentally, and things like that? And how does the main character deal with the impending failure? How does the main character finally succeed? And the results, what happens to the antagonists later on at the end? And what happens to the main character and the protagonist at the very end? So that's basically the plots in terms of a fiction story. If you can cover all that and answer those questions, or just at least the main questions like the narration, the storyline, the main characters, possibly what each of those main characters do, their thoughts, their physical, their mental, everything like that, just let the writer go from that point, use their creativity, and then from that point, they'll create a nice story for you. And then let's talk about nonfiction. Nonfiction is a little bit different and requires a little more structure. There's less leeway and a lot more structure. And what I found is, I can't really generalize everything, but what I found is the majority of nonfiction tends to be systematic or cumulative. Like the first chapter builds upon the second chapter and vice versa. So what you want to do is you want to split up it into its sections. Like step number 1, the basics. Kind of like how I've created this video course. This would be a great nonfiction type book. Step number 1, the basics. Step number 2, you got to do the planning, proper research. Step number 3, from that point on, you take that research and apply it. Step number 4, do this. And step number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you'll find that a lot of nonfiction books tend to have a table of contents. And then fictional books, you'll find that a lot of them don't necessarily have contents. They'll just have, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Versus nonfiction, they will usually have a systematic step-by-step table of contents that build upon each other, or sometimes may not build upon each other, but are broken up into sections that can help each other. So that's it for this specific video. Just take some time, do some planning, do some brainstorming, and get it all out, because in the next video, I'm going to show you how to find a good writer, both fiction and nonfiction, and how to find that writer and get your book to begin the process of writing it. Hey, and welcome to video number 3. This is finding good writers. So what I'm going to do in this specific video is to show you the specific strategies that I use to find good writers. I'm going to give you an overview of how to find good writers, but also how to pinpoint the bad ones. I've spent a lot of money, lost a lot of time, and definitely don't want you to face the same results. So definitely want to get you to the point where you can find good writers. Just if you can find that one good writer in the industry that you're going into, then you can continuously pump out good books. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started here. Okay, so what I want you to do is to open up your internet browser and to go to 2 different sites, Fiverr.com and odesk.com. I found a lot of good fictional writers at Fiverr.com, a lot of nonfiction writers at odesk.com, and I've sifted through tons and tons of writers, and that's pretty much the result that I found. Now, you can find a lot of good fictional writers at Odesk, but what I found is a lot of the fictional writers, they don't necessarily know where to go, so they go to Fiverr.com. And I know a lot of people are thinking right now, wait a minute, Fiverr.com? Really? Yes, Fiverr.com is actually the place to find fictional writers. And you'll see how I go about this process in just a minute. Now, if you go to Fiverr.com and just go to the search box here and type in book writing, let's just see what we get here. Now, as we're loading this, once it's loaded, you click on rating because you want to have the best writers at the top ranked up to the bottom. And let's just say fictional writing. Let's say fiction writing. Now, I personally have used Fiverr.com. In fact, I found one of my best writers at Fiverr.com. And I was paying for a 40,000 word fiction book. I would be paying about $125, which results into gigs, Fiverr.com, 1 gig is $5. So I was paying approximately 25 gigs. And it'll make a little more sense when I go through it. Okay, so if we sift through here, we'll see stuff like I will edit and critique. So we're not looking for editing and critiquing. We're looking for people who can write. And this person says, I will write you a short story up to 1,200 words for $5. So you can actually get short stories written, novellas, which are basically short novels. I believe an actual novel is like 50,000 to 100,000 words. So you can have novellas, which are a lot shorter, or short stories that are a lot shorter as well. So let's just look through here and open this in a new window here. I'll write a short story. I'll write a short story. And what I found is whenever you're looking for fiction writers, you're looking for somebody who is creative. So to do that, another thing you can do is figure out, okay, can they write poetry? Or can they write poems? If they can, that's a great sign that they have, you know, a good creative sense. So another word to use is short story, as we can see here. And of course you want to click on rating to make sure that everything is at the very top. So we got short story, short story, short story. Create one-page draft of your story in a comic book style. Creative story, personalized short story. Now you have to be aware some of these people use templates and they'll just fill in stuff like I will write a personalized short story. So what you're looking for is somebody who can write a story for you from scratch. So after you have figured out, you know, several people that can write short stories for you, what you need to do is just take a look at them. Now, it says 1,200 words for $5 for 14 days. You know, maybe you don't have as much time as 14 days. But what I like to do is I will usually contact these people and say, hey, I've got a book that I need to be written. I need 40,000 words and I'm willing to pay you, you know, more gigs. These people love big orders. They would rather work on a big order than one of these smaller orders. And if you click on order more than one, some of these people have like 8 gigs. So that's $40. So in order to write, let's say, a 40,000 word book for, let's say, 25 gigs, you'd have to order this gig so many times to reach that amount. So what I would do is I would contact the seller and say, hey, I'm interested in getting you to write, you know, a short story. And what I would personally do is I would actually test people. But you could actually look at their previous samples and see if you like it or not, because not everybody writes the same. So you want to make sure that you're getting a good writer who writes your style of writing, because there are many, many different types of writing styles. So what I would do if I were you is I would look at the people that can do it in a shorter amount of days. Like this person here, I will write a short story for $5 in 3 days. Okay, good. Let's look at the positive reviews. If the reviews are good, then I will personally get them to write like a sample. And then I would try looking for other people as well who can do it in a short amount of days. 7 days is fine, 9 days is fine, 2 days is good. So I might remove these two people. It's the same person, 7 days and 7 days. So if I were you, I would contact the people who can do it in a shorter number of days and say, hey, I need this done. Because the key here is you're trying to find a really good writer. Once you found a really good writer, then contact them and say, hey, I really like your writing. Let's do a bigger project. What can you give me in terms of a deal to do a 40,000 word story? From that point, they will usually take priority over your story in comparison to everybody else. So you tell them, hey, I'm looking for somebody who can write for me for a long period of time. I'm looking forward to put out many, many, many different books. Let's try this out. If it works, great, you know. So that way they know they need to do their best. And that's really what I do to find good writers. You've got to test it out, figure it out, or if you can find somebody who has a writing style that you like, stick with them, make a deal with them. Contact this person and say, hey, I got a bigger deal order that I need to be completed. And what I found with Fiverr.com is the majority of these writers take your story and your order as priority. Because think about it, if you're paying them $125, then they're going to take your story as priority over everybody else. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're dealing with these people on Fiverr. But the worst case scenario is also to hire somebody that doesn't do a good job and cannot really complete the project that you've given them. So you want to make sure that you do your due diligence, choose somebody who is honest, genuine, and is able to complete it on time. And the way that you test it is by getting people to write smaller, short stories. And maybe what you can do is you can get them to write a short story and say, hey, I really like this short story. Can you expand it from, let's say, 1,200 words to a 40,000 word story? So that's another avenue that you can take as well. So I use Fiverr. Don't pay any attention to people that say, what in the world, Fiverr? It's a place where you hire people for $5. But in reality, you can get bigger orders and find really good writers at Fiverr.com. Odesk.com is another great place. You can find fictional writers, but in my experience, I have found more nonfiction type writers. Nonfiction type writers tend to be a little more logical and are very systematic, which is great because that's what you need in terms of a format of writing. So what you need to do is go to odesk.com and you can type a keyword into here. We'll just say non-fiction writing. And I like Odesk because it actually gives you an idea of not just the feedback, but somebody's real expertise. So if I go down here and I say, let's say, because this is dealing with writing, nonfiction, if it deals with an area that somebody needs to be very good in the language that you specify, then you might want to be as specific as you can. But if you don't really require somebody who is really, really good at English but can actually produce good content, then that's great as well, because in the proofreading process, you can get them to proofread it and perfect the spelling, the grammar, and everything like that. You just don't want to hire somebody who doesn't do a good job, doesn't really understand the project, creates the content, and it's just not readable, because then it's not great for the proofreader, and the proofreader is likely going to not like you, not going to want to deal with you in the future. So you want to make sure that it's easy for the proofreader as well. So what I normally do is feedback score. I usually do 4.0 stars and above. You can do 4.5 stars and above as well. Hourly rate, I'd usually stick with max of 15. And what this does is it narrows it down a little bit. And then hours billed, I usually say 1 hour is fine, because there's a lot of projects on Odes. There are two types. There's fixed pricing and there's hourly pricing. A lot of people do fixed pricing, and if they do that, let's say this person here, Pospo T, she could have 20 different projects with fixed pricing, but you would never really see the hourly area because she didn't really do a lot of hours. So I wouldn't necessarily discriminate against somebody because they have lower hours. I would just say at least 1 hour and then do your due diligence from that point on. Now, we've kind of narrowed it down. Let's take a look at each one of these. So what I like to do is just go through here and open these people in brand new tabs. Now, I've actually tried this guy and he's horrible. I can definitely tell that he's horrible. This guy here, actually, I hired him and he actually left me in the dark and with unfinished series. So, but I'm not going to go too much into that, but you definitely want to do due diligence and find a good writer. So I'm not going to click on that. I'm going to go to the next page. And basically we're going to open up new tabs here. So let's take a look at these people. Now, in order to see their portfolios, you do have to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and log in right now. Okay, so odes.com, it shows the hours, it shows the number of jobs, the hourly rate, and the score. It also shows what their expertise is. Now, of course, they write this stuff here, but I wouldn't really take it for granted. I wouldn't actually trust that. I would look over their overview and try to figure out what do they say about themselves and their strengths. Then I would take a look at their work history and see if it matches up, because what I do is look for patterns. If the patterns don't add up and then they say that they're good at this, but down here they do a horrible job, I would be very, very weary. So let's take a look at here. 4 jobs in progress, how to make money, writer, woodworking, blog writing, woodworking, electrical tips. So we're seeing that she's a lot of non-fictional type writing, which is good. She has a lot of great feedback, and what I try to look for is what do they say about this person in terms of strengths. The documents are well written and in perfect grammar. That's a good thing. Now, even if they're perfect grammar, I would still hire a grammar, a proofreader. I'm going to post my poem, view more, beauty tips. So it's clear to me that this person has a lot of nonfiction type writing experience. So that's a good sign. English spelling test, US version, top 20%. That's also a good sign. If you take a look at their tests and see what they pass, you can actually see that. Now, in my experience, even though somebody might have a 5.0 rating, it doesn't really mean that they are, the writer for you. You still have to do your due diligence, look at their writing, actual writing, and so forth. Because I found people who had 5.0 stars, like the guy I showed you earlier, and he actually did work and then quit at the end so that we had to close it anyway. So a lot of these writers may have written something and then left it out and left you behind, and then you closing it, you don't actually have the ability to write them a review. So I would definitely do your due diligence. Take a look at their writing to make sure it adds up. It looks like that person is a good writer. This is a proofreader, so that's not what we're looking for. We got a writer here, 5.0. He has 2 jobs. Not a lot of experience on Odesk. Star Wars summaries, article writer. And let's take a look at the tests. US English Basic Test, top 10%, 10%. Creative writing, fiction, top 30%. That's good. Now, just because somebody doesn't have a lot of experience on Odesk doesn't really rule them out as somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing. So just keep that in mind too, because I've hired a lot of people who haven't had a lot of experience but were really, really good writers. You just want to make sure that you do your due diligence, look at their employment history, and see whether it adds up. And make sure that their writing style is what you want it to be. So that's pretty much the process of finding a really good writer, both fiction and nonfiction. And once you've found a good writer, you can give them your actual plot summary or your specifications for your fiction or nonfiction specifications and get them in the process of writing that book. Because in the next video, I'm going to show you how to revise it yourself. Like kind of like, what do you do after they're done? So welcome to video number 4. We're going to talk about revising your book that you've received from your writer. When you've received the book from your writer, it's time to review the book. So what I want you to do is to take the Word document or the PDF, and you want to print it all out. Print it out, read through it all, take a red pen and jot areas down, cross out areas and write notes where areas that might be confusing, it doesn't make sense, repetitive, or maybe parts of it could be reorganized where one part could be in the previous chapter and this and that. The whole goal here is to figure out, okay, like how can I make it easier for the proofreader so that they can do a really good job, but then it's not hectic for their life. Like you have specific control over your book by doing this. If you pass it to your proofreader right away, then you really have no idea what's in your book. So I say review it and revise it, because then you're going to know what's in it. Then you're going to know, okay, I'm putting my name on this. So I am proud to put my name on this. If you're using a pen name, that's fine. But keep in mind, you're going to get a reputation for that pen name as well. So the more books that you put out later, there's going to be a reputation, and either a bad reputation or a good reputation on that specific pen name. So make sure you review it, read it, write down everything that you can think of, rip it apart, and then of course revise it yourself. I recommend, if it's small stuff, to figure out a solution and do it yourself if possible. Because what I found is some writers just take a long time. Like when I was showing you, for example, how to find a writer, the one person that I pointed out that I definitely did not recommend, and in that situation, when I hired that person to write a fiction novel, they actually took 3 months, and then they quit and then left me in the dark, and that was it. So sometimes I say take what they wrote, write it yourself, complete it yourself, which is what I did, find a proofreader, and then get it proofread. That way you're not waiting for the writer to take a month or even 3 months to get back to you. And that way you don't have to pay them to wait that long. Because I mean, think about it. You wait 3 months, during those 3 months, you could have had a book done, and you could have been making several hundred to $1,000 from that book, and then you've just lost a lot of money because you had to wait 2 to 3 months. Now, if you are going through the whole book and it's too confusing, the whole work is just confusing, doesn't make sense, the organization is just horrible, you need to give feedback to the writer and get them to rewrite it and to explain to them, hey, it's too confusing. I need this revised, this and this and this. I need all of this revised until I can pay you. You know, you got to be upfront, blunt, sometimes blunt and honest. Now, keep in mind that fictional creative writers, when dealing with them, be very careful, because what I found is with creative writers, they're perfectionists. Perfectionists can take constructive criticism very harshly. So you have to do it in a certain manner. And I'm going to teach you this manner. It's called the sandwich method. Basically, you got a piece of bread, meat, and a sandwich. Whenever you approach somebody and you want them to correct something, you can read through and say, hey, you did a really good job. I like this, this, this. But this part right here is a little confusing. Can you reorganize it? Can you revise it? And this and this. I think if you can do that with, you know, the positives, this, and this, it's going to make it a really, really good book. Do it that way and approach it that way, especially when you're talking to creative people. Otherwise, you'll offend them, you'll piss them off, and they'll just outright leave. Like the writer that I was talking about earlier, I actually use that strategy, but some writers can get so involved with their work that they're such a perfectionist that they are disappointed in, you know, their creativity. They're not able to spit out as much creativity. So you've got to be upfront with your expectations. And if you're not upfront, then you will run into the same situation that I ran into. If you give them too much leeway, that can happen as well. But if you limit them too much, that can happen as well. In terms of non-fictional writers, what I found is that most of these writers can take criticism. They like criticism. So as long as you know your audience and know how to deal with your audience, then you'll know how to keep them for a long, long time. A lot of creative writers I found that are able to take constructive criticism and don't mind it. You've got to keep those writers to yourself and make sure that you give them bonuses, make them happy, and then keep them, because you're going to need them when you create your future books, especially when you're creating a series type book. So that's pretty much it. Make sure that you revise it yourself so you have full control over it. Then you know what's going out. And then don't worry about anything about proofreading or grammar. I'm going to show you all of that in the next video. Welcome to video number 5. We're going to talk about proofreading your book and finding a proofreader or editor. Now, remember how I recommended Fiverr.com when it comes to book writers? Well, when it comes to proofreaders, it's a little bit different. You're looking for somebody who not only can proofread and edit your book for spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes, and for sentence structure, you know, the confusing parts, reorganization of paragraphs, and things like that. So obviously in this case, what I found through my experience was Fiverr.com, most of these people will only proofread your spelling and your grammatical errors. They won't actually look at the sentence structure and how to make it better. So in my opinion, I don't recommend Fiverr for proofreaders. I do recommend Odas.com for proofreaders. If you go here, you type proofread in the search box. What I recommend next is at least 4.0 or above in terms of stars. Hourly rate $0 to $10. And really what it comes down to is at least 1 hour billing, any location. Don't discriminate. I found you can find really good proofreaders in the Philippines and elsewhere. So do not discriminate just because somebody is in India or UK or wherever. Really what you're looking for is somebody who can proofread well. So English level 5 out of 5. I usually choose independent. I don't really like to deal with agencies when it comes to proofreading. Other things like programming and software development, you can use agencies. But in this case, I'd rather deal with an individual. Tests, I usually put scored in the top 30%. Now, top 10%, you're going to get a smaller amount of people, but you're going to get people who are the best. Like the people that are the best, you're going to check the English basic skills or whatever language that you want to choose, whether it's UK English or any other test. All I want to know is, did they pass the spelling test? Did they pass the vocabulary test? The basic skills test? I'm not sure if there is an editor type test or a proofread test. So we could check this and see what we get here. Looks like nobody falls under the category, so I'm just going to uncheck this and go with this. So out of all the settings here, I've gone 5 out of 5 English level, all the tests, which the tests actually prove to you if they really are saying what they do. So as you can see here, removing any generalization that anyone overseas cannot really do proofreading, if you remove all of that, you will actually find really good proofreaders and editors in other countries that can do just a better, even better job than other people in America and so forth. So it really comes down to speciality and expertise. So as we can see here, what you need to do is open up these people into tabs just to take a look at them here. And we want to figure out, okay, are these people really good proofreaders? Because we want the best. So he's an attorney here, co-author, 3 books, legal subjects, and so forth and so forth. So this person probably is really good in terms of nonfiction writing, from what I can tell, just by looking at their projects and knowing attorneys tend to be really good for nonfiction, legal writing type stuff. So that's a good person to have possibly for non-fiction writing. Data entry, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, virtual assistant, rewrite, proofread, your skill set, blah, blah. Data entry, proofread. So what you're looking for is feedback here to see if this person is a good proofreader. And you want to make sure that if you're at odesk.com to specify in your project description and in your expectations that you want somebody not only to proofread the spelling and grammatical errors, but you want them to go forth and analyze the sentence structure and everything else like that. So as I can see here, this person seems to have a lot of nonfiction type expertise. This person's proofreader and writer from the Philippines. Copy editor, proofreader, health sites, copy editor, freelance editor, mostly physics and chemistry, so that's nonfiction. So what I'm trying to figure out is if somebody has had expertise or experience in fiction or nonfiction. So if you're looking for somebody who is going to proofread fiction, you need to make sure that they have some sort of experience in that. So graphic designer, that's a good sign of a creative person. Banner ads. I'm not sure why this person showed up because he's banner ad designer. Copy editor and article writer. So copy editors tend to be, like copywriting and so forth, tend to be creative writing. So this guy might be good for creative nonfiction writing. And he fits pretty much everything that I need. And as you can see, Philippines. I found a lot of good proofreaders from the Philippines actually. So definitely don't discriminate or generalize. Be open to different types of people. So that's it. Basically, I recommend going to odesk.com and sticking with it. I found other sites, and there's one in particular. There's the perfectionisteditor.com. This is a good perfectionist proofreader. And one thing I found to actually test their proofreading is by simply looking at what they wrote here and copying it into Microsoft Word to see if there are any errors. So when they respond to you, copy that into Microsoft Word. And if their responses have a lot of errors, you might want to be careful. But if their response after you copy it to Microsoft Word, you don't find any errors or anything like that, that might be a good sign. So that's another little trick that I use when I find proofreaders and try to test them. Hello and welcome to video number 6, bartering secrets. Now this is something that you may have never seen before, but I've tried it and it works well. So basically, how do you get a freelancer to do work for you for free? I haven't necessarily tried this on writers, but this has definitely worked with proofreaders, especially non-established proofreaders. People who don't necessarily have a large client base yet, because if you find an established proofreader, they're probably going to look at you like you're an idiot. But if you approach a non-established proofreader who wouldn't mind doing a little work for free just to help get established, then they're more likely going to be open to this proposition. Here's what I told them. I said, hey, I'll put your name on my book on Amazon as the editor. And not only that, I'm going to give you a testimonial so that when people visit your page, your Facebook fan page, your website, or whatever, they can see under your testimonials my testimonial, plus they can, get proof by going to Amazon or even downloading the book and seeing your name as the editor. So that actually works with non-established proofreaders. You can also set them up with a website if you know how to do it. Otherwise, you can use Fiverr.com to get somebody to set up a WordPress site, populate it with WordPress theme and stuff like that. I specifically set them up personally because I want to make sure that they get a really good deal. But what I found was that was actually a really good way to get proofreaders to proofread your book. Because think about it, if they put their name on your book, and they're gonna want to do a good job, so they're gonna work extra hard to make sure that your book is done well. So obviously you don't want to choose just anybody, you want to choose somebody who's good. And I recommend actually paying them first, testing them out, because most established proofreaders wouldn't really care about this, but most non-established proofreaders would think, hey, this is free advertising, this is a great way to build my portfolio and things like that. So that's my secret. Use it wisely, and you can test it on writers too. I've never done it with writers, but you could do it on writers and see what kind of results you get. No harm in asking. Welcome to video number 7. We're going to talk about e-cover design. Unfortunately, in this day and age, people do judge a book by its cover. And that's unfortunate, but that's a reality that we're going to have to get through. And we're going to have to get a good book that expresses our book. Get a bad book, people are going to judge you by your cover and not by your book, and then make presumptions. People love to make presumptions, so you want to make sure that you eliminate them or attract the right audience and appeal to the right audience as well. Now, before we go to sites like odesk.com or fiverr.com, I do want to say that I would rather find somebody who has some experience in doing CreateSpace covers or Kindle covers if possible. If it's not possible, it's fine. You just want to make sure that the e-cover design that they create is big enough so that if you have to decrease the size to a smaller size, you can actually do that. So before you can find a freelancer to design your book image, you need to know the dimensions of your cover art for your Kindle, for your CreateSpace, for wherever that you are uploading the images to. Now, if you go to Google and type in Kindle dimensions, you'll likely be forwarded to this page. And as you can see here, it says requirements for the size of your cover have a ideal height/width ratio of 1.6. This means for a minimum of 625 pixels on the shortest side and 1000 pixels on the longest side. So ideally, if you can, with height. So 625 by that. But what I found is if you can get a better quality by making your image this on the shortest side and 2500 pixels on the longest side, you can actually get better quality for your e-covers. So what I recommend is using this as kind of a rule of thumb, or even making it bigger if possible. The bigger the better, because if you ever have to decrease the size of your e-cover in the future and you get somebody to do it for you, it's actually very, very easy to decrease. To increase the size, let's say you make it this size here and CreateSpace wants a bigger size, then you're left in the dark and you're going to have problems, because increasing the size, you're going to lose resolution and the image is going to become fuzzy. So knowing this information, now you know how big the Kindle e-cover or the CreateSpace e-cover needs to be. Now, CreateSpace is a little different. Whatever size that you choose is obviously going to be the size. Now, before you go to find a designer, a lot of designers will use free stock photo images. And some of these images, they may not have the rights to do so. So what I recommend that you do is go to bigstockphoto.com, find an image that you like, and use that image. Make sure that you read the license for Big Stock Photo, but last I checked, you're able to use this for a book as is. So just read the license, make sure that what you want to do with it is legal, but in the majority of times with big stock photo, it's actually legal. So do your due diligence on that. Now let's take a look at finding somebody who can design an e-cover for us. If you go to Fiverr.com and type in e-cover, click on rating, and as we can see here, we've got people that will design a cool ebook cover. And I'm just going to open this up. And I like to open a bunch of these open and see what we get here. So we get, okay, so let's take a look through here. And see if what they're creating is good or not. Now, from my experience, taking a look at this person is good at developing kind of non-fiction books. Not a lot of fiction or creativity in this person that I see. And that's fine if your book is non-fiction. So let's take a look at here. So this person actually has some fictional type designs here, as we can see here. So not too bad, not bad on Fiverr. They have pretty good looking e-covers. Not necessarily the stuff that I would really go for, but definitely not bad for $5. Now we're talking. This person here definitely, yeah, this person here is really good. This, it's SAPIZOL. Look at their gig rating. They got 2 negative reviews. Thumbs down. Why is that? So 125 positive reviews, that's a lot better. So you're always going to find negative reviews. And this person here, let's take a look at their stuff. Not very good in my opinion. So a lot of these are non-fiction type designers, but from what I see, this person's not bad either. This person actually seems like he do a good job. So I think I've come down to this person and this person. Looks like they got some creativity in them. So once you're done with that, what you can do is contact the seller. I would not order right away. I would contact them and say, hey, I want to have a Kindle e-cover or a CreateSpace e-cover or whatever format you're looking for. Make sure that they understand clearly what you want, the dimensions that you want, and that you will be using your own images in the cover, because you don't really want to use their images because you don't know where they got the images from. And if you use their images and you violate some sort of copyright law, you're screwed. You're going to have to start all over from square one. Odesk.com is another great place. You can type in Kindle e-covers and just take a look through here, see what we get. I found a lot of really good designers. A lot of them they tend to be in the Philippines. That's just personal experience. Or, you know, European countries, found some in the USA, but really do your due diligence, obviously. If I look at these here, not the best. looks okay for nonfiction. Now that looks pretty good. That looks good. Not too good here. Now this actually looks really good. This book cover artist is actually not too bad. So I would go through, look at their portfolio, but actually make sure that everything lines up. Say, let's take a look at this. And say we say, okay, this person's pretty good. Let's take a look at their employment history. So this person had a lot of publication experience, so that's a good thing. So if their history aligns with their tests and align with your portfolio and the jobs that they do, that might be a good sign. Because some people actually plagiarize and will steal other people's work. So you want to make sure that they are legit by doing your research. Welcome to video number 8. We're going to talk about printing and distributing your books. Now, there are many different types of formats out there. There's Kindle, digital, paperbacks, hardcover books, and more. So those are pretty much the popular types of formats that I will be covering in this specific video. So whenever you want to create, let's say, a paperback book, get it printed when somebody buys it and have it delivered to that specific customer, that's what we call a POD company, a pod company. So publish on demand. So there's Amazon and CreateSpace, which is what I'm going to start out with. Amazon Kindle obviously is digital, so everything is delivered digitally by Amazon. What I found is it's very easy to use. The only thing that's difficult sometimes that people face in terms of problems is formatting the book for Kindle. But there's a lot of different types of Kindle softwares out there that you can use to format for Kindle, or even get somebody to do it. So what I found with Amazon and CreateSpace, there are a larger amount of people that will have services where they can actually format it for you. And that's what I like about Amazon Kindle and especially CreateSpace. CreateSpace.com is a business partner that is part of Amazon itself. And what they do is they print paperback softcover books for your book. They don't do hardcovers, but they do have an option where you can actually pay a fee. I believe it's a $99 fee, and order hardcover books. But they don't actually print hardcovers and deliver it to your customers. You actually have to use a different type of printer that will distribute it to Amazon.com. What I like about CreateSpace is there is really no paperwork. You can get started up quickly and easily. You can create an account and begin to, add the title, add the ISBN number, which CreateSpace.com gives you a free ISBN number. You can use your own ISBN number if you want to, but they also give you a free one, so just go with that. And there's no paperwork. You don't have to fill out your W-9 tax forms or application process or anything. It's just set up, get it done, that's it. Their customer service is fast and easy to get lots of help. There's tons of forums out there where people have had to ask questions and have had their questions answered, which is what I like about CreateSpace. And there are tons and tons of video tutorials, written textual tutorials out there for CreateSpace. So if any time you run into a problem, basically there are places where you can find the answer to. In terms of changes, now when I say changes, that means that you can actually, what I like about it is you can actually edit everything. You can submit it. You can actually see what it's going to look like in terms of the interior design, whether it's a picture book or a textbook or a novel or anything like that. That's what I like about CreateSpace is you can actually see for yourself, errors, possible errors, and their system will actually give you errors that they find while reviewing your book. Now, I believe after you have submitted and paid a fee for them to actually review it, there might be a cost for changes there in the future. But from what I found was CreateSpace.com doesn't have a lot of fees in terms of startup fees. So in the end, I'd recommend CreateSpace.com. Lightning Source is a printer. They're not really a distributor, but they do distribute to like local bookstores. But what I found was they're horrible, like really, really horrible. It's lightningsource.com. They're the only ones that do hardcovers that actually have good quality hardcovers. Their customer service is lousy. They took 15 days to get approved. They don't really like to deal with self-publishers. So unless you can actually portray yourself as, unless you're, for example, a bigger company, like a really big company, most of the time they don't want to deal with you. Now, the reason why I'm covering this is because I want you to be aware of what people are talking about, in the forums and things like that. Some people will say Lightning Source is great, but if you do a search on Google, you'll find out that really Lightning Source isn't that great because they don't like to deal with self-publishers. The startup costs are about 2 to 3 times more than CreateSpace. You're probably looking about $400 to $500 startup costs. Any changes require a $40 fee. In terms of their formatting, you can barely find any information out on Google. I spent several weeks doing research on Lightning Source and actually went through the applying process, and it just takes a long time to get through to them and get an answer from them. In fact, it usually takes about 1 week to get a response from them. Now, they do distribute to Amazon and local bookstores, but what I found was bookstores is a dying breed. If you look at Barnes & Nobles, they're closing like 9 stores all around town, and if you look in the bookstores and actually take a look at what people buy, it's either coffee, or they're there for the Wi-Fi, or they're there to study. They don't actually buy the books, and some people buy the books, but it's very rare. So what I found is it really comes down to Amazon or you selling the books yourself. So I definitely don't recommend Lightning Source. Now, if you want to develop a hardcover, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that here's the secret. If you want a hardcovers, then Lightning Source can be a problem. If you look elsewhere, you might be able to find, places like in China that will actually develop your hardcover book and then send it to you, but that's another risk because they don't have copyright laws and they'll simply copy your work. So that's not really an avenue. That's the only other avenue that I could find. But there's another place called virtualbookworm.com that is good too, but I believe their startup cost is like $700. But the secret that I found was use CreateSpace and create square books if you can't do hardcovers with Lightning Source. Square books actually make your book look professional. And if you can do an 8 by 8.25 by 8.25 or 8.5 by 8.5, your book will actually look pretty professional, even though it's not hardcover. So I want to make sure that I made that note so that you understood, okay, if I can't do it at Lightning Source, where can I do it? So that's that. I recommend you go with CreateSpace for paperbacks and then Kindle with Amazon Kindle in terms of digital ebooks. Now, there are other places like smashwords.com, but these are pretty much the two that I recommend. And what I'm finding in the trend is Amazon owns the greatest market share. So you're going to earn the most money from Amazon.com. Now, some people can say otherwise. Some people can say Smashwords and other places. But really what it comes down to is you doing the testing and figuring out what works for you. Welcome to video number 9. We're going to talk about formatting for the pod, the print-on-demand company. And this specific case is going to be CreateSpace. Now, you can also format for Kindle as well if you would like to, and I'll point you to some resources where you can do so. Okay, so if you go to google.com here, type in Kindle cover dimensions. We covered this in video number 7, but make sure that the dimensions of the cover art is for the best quality, this size here. Now, the interior you can get formatted, or you can actually format that yourself. There is a site that I personally use called KinstantFormatter.com, as you can see here. And you pay by credits. You pay 1,000 credits for $27. But to be honest, you really won't really even use all the credits. So don't even worry about that. But I use this to format my Kindle books. You can also go to Fiverr to find people to format for Kindle, but it can add up as well. So if you want to do it yourself, KinstantFormatter.com is a good way to go. Or you can go to Fiverr.com and type in format Kindle. And you'll find people that will format and convert your document to ebook for KDP. KDP is the Amazon Kindle, as you can see here. So there are a lot of people out there that will do it for you for only $5. You can use odesk.com if you want to, but I found it's okay to use Fiverr.com in this case. Now, let's talk about CreateSpace. CreateSpace offers you templates for the interior. So now again, it separates two different things, the exterior cover and the interior document. This is the interior document. And if you go to createspace.com/help/book/artwork.do, you'll find this page here. So what you do here is you choose the interior type. Most of you will be black and white, but if you have a picture book or a children's book or so forth, you'll want to have full color or full color with bleed. Bleed basically means that you will have, let's say, a dimension. And bleed means the image will go past the grid, and then when you look at a book, the whole cover is an image. If it's full color without bleed, then the surrounding part of the image will be white. So we could do black and white, trim size. That's just the size that you want. So you could do 6:9 is usually the standard size. You could say 105 pages. Paper color, we'll just say white. Build template, and CreateSpace will automatically create your template. And that's why I like CreateSpace. I've tried Lightning Source. They very, very lousy in terms of their instructions on how to use their templates. But CreateSpace, I found, is pretty much the best. You can download it by PNG file or PDF file. I would say download both, or download the zip file here. And then in terms of creating the cover for your PDF, basically the way that they calculate it is you can calculate the spine or the width of your book. So obviously, in order to know the spine of your width, you need to know how many pages you have. So if you have 10 pages, you multiply that by this specific number here. And you don't have to do any of this. You just have to figure out what the spine is, the cover width, the cover height that you want, and then give that to somebody who can format that, and then they'll do the formatting. But if you use Fiverr, just make sure that you contact the person in advance and let them know the whole situation so that they can give you the right price. Otherwise, you can outsource it by going to odesk.com and finding somebody who has experience in all of this who can do the whole thing for you. Because what I found in the end is that formatting takes time. Formatting takes time, and if you do it yourself, it'll take several weeks or several hard days, and you'll just be frustrated. So that's just something to keep in mind there. Welcome to video number 10. I'm going to talk about getting a book website. This will help you increase your marketing reach and interaction between your fans, your customers, and yourself. So creating a book website starts out by finding a good book website that you want. I'd recommend themeforest.net because they have one of the best book websites that I found and the cheapest. So go to ThemeForest, type in book, and as you can see here, we've got book page, sell your books with style. So we'll click on that. Bookstore, sell your book. And we could just type that in here, sell book. That might give us a more specific keyword phrase. Selling ebooks, ebookie, ebookie, ebook authors. So let's just take a look at what we have here. So book page, it's $8. And if we click on live preview, we can take a look at the website here. And it's not bad. It's pretty straightforward, as you can see here. Now, if you have more books in the future, you may want to have a author type site. So this is nice. And you want to figure out, okay, it says compatible with Bootstrap. So you want to find somebody who can install Bootstrap. It actually looks really, really nice, as you can see here. I might type in author. So you got author WordPress theme. I'd always look at sales to see how many people bought it. These are a little more expensive because they're WordPress themes. So it really depends on kind of your goal. Like, is your goal just to sell that one specific book? Or is your goal to add content in the future so that when people visit your site, they not only see your site, but they also see the content that you've added that you'll be using to get them back to your site. And in reality, what I found is really you can just take any WordPress theme or HTML theme and just tweak it and make it into a book website. It doesn't necessarily have to be specifically for books. Now this is neat. It says ebook creator. You can actually create ebooks with this theme. Now, after you have found a website that you want, the key is, in order to set it up, you need to have domain and hosting. I recommend Namecheap.com, and they also have hosting. And once you have signed up for this and got the information, like the login information and everything like that, then you can go on to Fiverr.com and type in website setup. Now, obviously, you need to know what type of website this is. So this is basically HTML files right here. So what I go to do is I go to Fiverr.com and I'll type in HTML website setup. And I'll find somebody who can set up an HTML website. Likely you'll run into a lot of people because HTML is very easy to install. I will tweak CSS to make sites look custom built. So you could have somebody like this. Anybody that has HTML knowledge can actually set up the site. So obviously, even if a gig doesn't necessarily say that they'll do something, what I normally do is I contact them and say, hey, this is what I'm facing and this is what I need to be done. Can you do it? And most likely they'll respond yes. So like here, this is WordPress. So obviously you're going to need to have a WordPress site set up. So type in WordPress setup here. You can do it yourself if you want to do that, or you can simply outsource it. I will install WordPress and your theme and necessary plugins plus backlinks bonus. So I've actually used this person. This one's actually good. So there you go. Find a theme. Make sure that you look at the software version. If it's WordPress, find a WordPress person that'll set it up. If it's HTML, find somebody that will set up HTML. If it's Bootstrap or anything else like that, it's a little bit more specialized, so you'll have to figure that out. But that's it. That'll help you and your fans communicate, your fans to come to your site, learn more about you and your other books, and you can use that to not only list your books, but to write other blog posts, other content, things that are updated, upcoming books, and things like that. So really just a communication tool that really connects you and your fans and your customers together.